The issues affecting you. Revealed, explained, discussed. Now on WGAL 8 In Focus.
Hello, I'm Susan Shapiro. Personal finance is on the minds of many people with both federal and state budget impasses. With the high cost of things, how can you budget for household expenses, an emergency fund, and the holidays? We'll speak with two HUD-certified financial counselors who help people through the home buying process and sometimes foreclosure. And we'll speak with a woman who went through financial counseling. We're putting your personal finances in focus. Joining us now are Christina Wise and Diane Beatty. Both are HUD-certified counselors with Tenfold, which educates people about housing and how to buy a house and avoid foreclosure. We're going to talk about that. What is a HUD counselor, Diane?
A HUD counselor is a certified counselor that allows us as counselors to counsel people on budgeting, credit, educating them on pre-purchase, and then also helping people who are actually going to settlement, giving the education on what to expect when they go to settlement.
Certainly education first-time home buyers would definitely need. How much more difficult is it for people to buy a home these days?
With the way the market is right now, there is many fewer houses that are in an affordable range for most of the households in Lancaster County. A lot of them are just single household or single income households. So by coming to us, they get a more realistic picture of what their situation is and how that would translate into a mortgage. Can they afford the mortgage? How much of a mortgage can they afford? And that'll help them to find or kind of pinpoint the homes that they're looking at into something that is attainable for their situation.
What do you tell people about how much they can afford in terms of a house?
So it all begins with the budget, where they are financially, whether or not they can afford a home, what they need to work on in order to get to that point as far as being able to afford a home. But it all begins with their budget.
All right, so let's begin with the budget. How do you make a budget?
So you first want to kind of look at, what are the things that you absolutely have to pay every month? And that's going to be your rent, your mortgage, so housing. Then the pieces that go along with housing are going to be your utilities, maintenance on the property, things along those lines. Stuff that you don't necessarily pay every month, like home maintenance, but it still should be planned for in your budget. And that's something that we kind of have to make sure we're including when we're making these plans to purchase a home. But then you also want to think about the other stuff. So most people don't necessarily pay attention to how much they're spending on things like groceries because it's a necessity. But it's still something that should be budgeted because, again, there's cheaper options, there's more expensive options, and we can just kind of help tailor that based on their activity, their wants, their desires, and kind of bring it down into a more personalized look where if you want to buy this home for this dollar amount, we would need to get rid of some of these things so that you can afford it and kind of help them see that. It's not about telling them what to do with their budget. It's more about explaining, this is what we're seeing in your budget. Do you feel there's anything you can change, and making them a part of it? Because if we tell them do A, B, C, and D, and then they walk out the door, we're not there to continue helping them. So it's a very big part where we teach them how to budget, how to look at their expenses, how to make it something that is manageable on their own so that we're setting them up to continue doing so without that help.
You often hear you should have an emergency fund. What is that, and how do you have one of those?
So an emergency fund is obviously for emergencies. Again, it starts with the budget, where you're at financially, and what it is you have left over that you could save for those emergencies.
And where should you put that money?
In a savings account at your bank. But we often say that, I often say with individuals who aren't used to saving or may think that they don't have enough to save, to at least look into a savings account that you don't have access to. Out of sight, out of mind. So you're going to start saving on a monthly basis. You want to make sure that you put that money into a savings account that you're not even going to see, right? And then start off realistic goals of what you can save monthly, and then once you reach that goal, and then increasing that amount to continue to save.
Kind of make it a habit.
Right.
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 And if you've never done it before, like we said, don't start big. It should
Right.
be realistic, and it should be something that is attainable for you. So if you go in and you're like, I want to save $5,000 because that'll be 2 months worth of expenses, but you've never saved before, the second you don't hit that goal, you're going to be less likely to keep trying.
Right, right.
So you want to start with something that's smaller. Break that down. You want to save $5,000 in the future? Great. That's your 10-year goal. What do we do right now? Let's say, how much can we save $100 in the next 3 months? And then break that down. How much would that need to be per paycheck, and move that over? If you don't even know that you can do that, start with $5. When your paycheck comes through, set an automatic transfer that goes on the same day that you get paid into another account, because you're not even going to notice it's gone. It's going to move, you don't see it, and like she said, if it's in an account that's in another institution, you're not going to see it there. But sometimes even on the online banking features, you have the ability to hide that account from yourself, and you don't have
That's
to
a
view
good
it.
idea. Yeah.
So you just take that off, and you don't see it, every time you sign in. And then one day, I do that personally for my Christmas club. I move some money over every paycheck. I have $5 per child that goes over every Friday. And then at the end, in October, I see it and I'm like, all right, did good there. And then that's when I pull out, and that's what I specifically use for my holiday expenses.
All right, well, Christmas fun, we'll talk more about holiday spending and how you can avoid getting into trouble.
This is WGAL 8 in Focus. Coverage you can count on.
We continue our conversation with Christina Wise and Diane Beatty, who are both certified HUD counselors with Tenfold. And you mentioned the Christmas Club. And that sounds a little old-fashioned, but is that a way to go as we get ready for the holidays?
So it is, and it's something that can help you kind of manage your budget to stick to it. If you look at, my goal for Christmas is to save $300 for Christmas time. If you break that down to a monthly increment, that would be about $25 a month. So if you move that aside every month and put it over and don't touch it, by the time you're ready to make those purchases and buy Christmas presents, the money is there. So moving it into things like a Christmas club, a lot of institutions right now call them a holiday club. But some of those even have kind of restrictions where you can't pull it out before a few months before the holiday season, to kind of just give you a little extra barrier there of putting it aside. But if you do that every month, it doesn't have you scrambling at the end of the year where, I don't have anything saved. So putting that aside every month will get that, that extra stress level, not happening at Christmas time.
Again, it becomes a habit.
Right, and
Yeah.
it's something that you're used to because it automatically goes over. So if you do something like an automatic transfer on the day of your pay, 9 times out of 10, you're not even going to notice it, because you're going to get that pay, you're going to say, all right, this is what I've got right now, and if the money's already gone, and if it's into an account, like she said, at another financial institution, you may not see it, so you don't touch it.
I imagine the holidays are a place where people get into financial trouble.
Yes, we see that a lot. And again, just when we meet with clients, talking to them about different options that they have or alternatives that they have to spend for Christmas, or being able to find meaningful gifts for family members or anything like that.
Do
But
things for people.
Yes,
Correct.
I think we're
spending
so
time.
surrounded by the, buying kind of
gifts, yes. And there's a
Yeah.
lot more that you could do that you don't have to spend, $2,000 for the holiday season.
Yeah, because you're going to pay for it, right?
You are.
Yes.
I know you're not financial advisors or financial counselors, but Transamerica data says 1 in 3 workers have taken a loan or early withdrawal or hardship withdrawal from their retirement accounts. Is that a good idea?
So no, the general rule is that no, we don't want to touch it. The money that goes into retirement should be for retirement, just like your emergency accounts should be for emergency. There are situations, as you mentioned, that people are pulling from it right now. Our economy is very tight. Most people are working very hard just to get paycheck to paycheck. And there may be situations like if you are facing foreclosure, let's say, and you have the ability to pull from your retirement, that may be the best option. But when we're going with general rule of thumb, no, we don't want you to touch that, because when you don't have an income, you're not able to work, you need that money in there. So keeping it in there for that long term is going to give you the best chance of being able to continue your regular lifestyle once you've into that retirement age.
And it's affecting the compounding, which
Right,
is
so you're going to get
way
the interest the longer that it's
increases,
in
yeah.
there, and some lenders, some employers for most of the retirement accounts have some incentives for putting that money in there. If you put some in, they'll match it. If it's in there for, so long, you'll get a little bit of a bonus. So there's things like that that have advantages to putting it in there and not touching it. Then you also have to think of, if you do pull it, there also are generally some consequences to that too. So that's something that you'll have to consider. And as you mentioned, we're not able to give any advice on taxes or investments.
I was going to say there can be some tax implications.
Yes, you're going to have that extra, things that you need to consider other than the reason you need it now when making that. And generally, we would send you to whoever is your tax advisor or whoever your financial consultant could be.
You also mentioned foreclosure, which is something else you counsel people. How do most people get into a foreclosure situation?
So your home should be your priority in your budget. No matter what, that should be the first thing you pay. So when we are looking at the funds that you have available each month, the first thing that you should be taking out is your mortgage and or rent payment. And right now, it seems that there was the last couple years have been a little crazy. People trying to, come back from COVID. That was a different, something nobody ever had before. So people got off track having to pay their bills as normal. So a lot of people right now are just trying to learn how to do that again. And it takes focus, again, starting with a budget. You've got to have a budget. You've got to know how much your income's coming in and take that mortgage payment out immediately from that total before making plans of any of the other funds.
I imagine the last thing you want to have is a foreclosure.
Correct.
It hurts and it's not fun. It is a long process to get through. Our goal would be you can come, for assistance. We will do our best to help you with it, give you all of the options and say this is what you can do, but it's not a fast process. It is not a cheap process. The fees involved, the amount of work you have to do to try to get out of it is difficult. So making your payment on time when it is due as agreed is the best way to avoid it.
And I imagine you're losing equity if you're going into foreclosure.
Yes, so the equity is going to be, by the time you're in foreclosure, your equity doesn't really mean anything because at that point in time, most lenders are not going to worry about your equity because you didn't pay the first mortgage. Right. So it limits your options on what you can use with that house. It's no longer an asset right now, it's a detriment. We need to figure out how to fix that and flip it and get you back out of the foreclosure and back into a normal functioning budget, paying the bills on time so it does not happen again.
And we've talked about home ownership, but rents are pretty high right now too for clients.
Yes. In Lancaster County, they are extremely high compared to previous years. And again, with foreclosure, the same thing with rent. Even though you are renting and you have all these other bills, your rent comes first before anything. So, but it is a challenge for a lot of people right now, trying to keep up with their rent payment and all of their utilities and whatever other expenses they have.
All right, well, stay with us. We'll talk more about what you should do as we look toward the end of the year and tax season.
This is WGAL 8 in Focus, coverage you can count on.
We're talking about personal finances with Christina Wise and Diane Beatty, who are both certified HUD counselors with Tenfold. And we're getting close to the end of the year. Are there some things people should think about as we head into tax season?
Well, tax season, again, that is your tax preparer, financial advisor for tax season. But one thing I always talk to clients about is tax season. Once you get your tax season, that is the perfect time to start that budgeting. Looking at your budget, looking at what you can save, what you need to save for, what you need to pay off, things like that.
And it gives you a good idea of how much you've spent, I think, in the past year and how much money you have taken in.
Correct, yes.
So another big piece with tax season, especially with our community, I know I've done it myself, but is they bank on that tax return when they're coming in.
Yes.
A lot of their plans are, I'm going to fix this during tax season, but even the best laid plans don't ever follow through because you have to actually make those payments. So you could say you're going to pay off this debt, I'm going to pay off this credit card, I'm going to pay off this when I get this tax return. But when you go out and you're like, you know what, I worked hard, I'm going to go and we're going to go to the beach for the weekend, then you don't pay it off. So you need to stick to those plans and you need to kind of have an idea of what you're going to do. So going into tax, again, we can't necessarily tell you what your return is going to be or how much you're going to go, anything like that. That again is going to be your tax advisor. But to have an idea of, normally I get about this much back or normally I owe this much in will allow you to begin that plan again for the next year. So you want to think, now is going to be the time to start thinking about it. Once the tax season comes, if it's a amount that you think you're going to have to owe again for the next year, do the same thing I mentioned about savings. Put money aside every month. That way you have the full year, break it down in smaller manageable increments, and it's ready when it's there. But if it's something where you're getting money back, that's when we start saying, all right, how do we use this smartly? Looking at your situation, again, starting with that base budget. Where do you owe money? How much do you have to spend every month? And maybe, instead of budgeting for clothing or Christmas during your budget every month, maybe you pull that $600, I want $600, you pull it from your tax return and you put it in a savings and you don't touch it until the end of the year. And then that opens up a little more freedom in your budget from month to month.
Don't look at it as you're getting a big bonus.
It's not free money. You worked for it, but
we
use
see
it
a lot
the right
of people who just spend it rather than saving it or paying off debt. So I think when we see clients, it's more of like getting that plan in place, doing a plan, so that they can take that plan home. So it's in front of them. They can see, okay, well, this is what we talked about, this is what I agreed to, and this is what I need to do.
And you deal with all levels of income. I mean, it's not just
yes.
Yep.
low-income people who are getting into trouble too, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yes, we deal with many income levels.
Yeah, I mean, they're coming in again, just, if they're coming in where they're still living with their parents and they're, I want to get a job so I can move out on my own. How much money do I need to make? And we'll start with that. They don't even have income, so we're talking potential. True. And we're creating a budget to try to picture out, if you spent this much, this is how much you would need. So that's what they can look for going out. But then I also, in some of the pre-purchase, they've rented their whole life, and it's a mom and a husband and a wife. Maybe they've worked so hard all their life to pay rent, and they're like, what, I'm tired of doing that. I want some help. And then we might have more income because it is a 2-income household and they've been working at the same job. So it is a vast difference, but regardless of where you are, what your income level it is, it's going to start with that budget. Your budget, you need to know what your budget is, what money you need to pay every month, and how much you have to do it to make a plan that's going to work moving forward.
Sounds like it's a good idea to educate yourself, right?
It is.
Well, thank you both, and we appreciate your expertise.
Sure.
Coming up on WGAL 8 in Focus, we'll speak with a woman who went through financial counseling at Tenfold and what she learned.
This is WGAL 8 in Focus, coverage you can count on.
We're joined now by Misty Logan, who went through financial counseling at Tenfold. It was then known as Tabor. Thanks so much for being here and sharing your story. What got you to that point where you needed financial counseling?
It's a very good question. It actually was a couple embarrassing moments back to back where I needed a car or I applied for a credit card and I couldn't get approved for anything. And I didn't understand how I got there, why I had bad credit, and I had no idea how to fix it. But knew that I needed to, and came across Tabor Tenfold and was able to start that journey.
What did get you in trouble? Did you have a lot of credit card debt or other debt?
Believe it or not, because I could never get approved for a credit card, thankfully I did not have credit card debt, but I had thousands of dollars of medical debt.
Medical debt?
Medical debt on my credit report, yes.
And why didn't you pay that off, or what happened?
There's this myth out there that medical bills do not go on your credit. And I lived true by that. I would get a medical bill and toss it right out and not even look at it, thinking, well, they can't do anything to me. And when I started my journey with Tenfold, it was all medical debt on my credit report. And I was shocked. I mean, I didn't even know it was on there.
Mm-hmm. And it is a big reason why a lot of people end up in bankruptcy.
Yes.
So what did you learn at Tenfold that made the turnaround? I know this was a number of years ago, but how did you do it?
Everything. I went there. I didn't even know what to ask. I didn't even know really where to start. And they walked me through every single step of the way. Here's where you get your credit report. Print it off, bring it in, and line by line, we went through it. And, is this a legitimate debt? Did you incur this? Yes, I did. They were all mine, rightfully so. And really guided me on what's in your budget, what can you afford? We have to start paying down some of this debt. We have to start paying these things off if you want to see improvements. It wasn't a short process. I mean, it took years to eventually correct, but without their guidance, I never would have known these things.
And what was that like to go through that?
It was so supportive. I mean, I didn't have anybody in my life that I could ask these questions to, or I was too embarrassed to maybe ask, you know, so having a place like Tenfold to go and know that you're talking to certified counselors and they're giving you correct and true information made a world of difference.
It sounds like you didn't have a lot of financial literacy, so to speak, and probably that's a lot of people out there.
Yes. Growing up in my house, there were no conversations about finances, budget. My parents never sat down with me, like most, and said, oh, here's how you do life, you know. And they were never homeowners. You know, I don't know if my parents even had good credit. I never heard those conversations.
So how are you today? This is about 10 years now.
Yes.
What's going on now?
Been a homeowner for years now. And the best thing about this is, yeah, I'm a homeowner, but now my children are financially literate. You know, I talk to them about credit every time I learn something. You know, they were like 13 years old. I'm like, so when you're 18, you know, you want to do this when you have credit. And they have begun their credit journeys, and my one son's looking at buying his first house in the next couple of years.
That's why we talk to our kids about drugs and
Right.
sex and other things.
Yes.
But maybe this is something that you really need to concentrate on.
Yes.
So you must feel like a weight was lifted off of you.
Huge. It sounds cliche, but it's very empowering. So before fixing my credit and being confident that I now have good credit, I never even thought about budgeting, retirement. I mean, all that stuff was not even in my wheelhouse. And fast forward now, rectifying my credit, getting out of debt, I can now look to the future. And I'm probably still behind on my retirement fund, but I have one. And I know how important it is. And I mean, that's huge for my future.
That is huge. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Congratulations on
Thank
your
you.
journey, and thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Tenfold offers workshops and free financial counseling. You can learn more at their website, wearetenfold.org. Thank you for joining us for WGAL 8 in Focus. For all of us at WGAL, I'm Susan Shapiro. Join us again next Sunday morning at 11 for WGAL 8 in Focus, right after NBC's Meet the Press. And you can watch each episode of In Focus, plus WGAL's latest newscasts, original programming, and more. Just download the Very Local app and stream for free on Roku and Amazon Fire TV.